Hi, everyone. This is Heather Hodges. I'm an organizational psychologist. Welcome to my show. This is the place where we say I'm in to creativity, bold thinking, transformational growth, and meaningful conversations. Today, we're talking about something deeply human and incredibly powerful: stories. Storytelling is humanity's oldest technology for connection, identity, and sense-making. And today's guest says that if you are a leader, you are the narrator, the voice who comments on the story and draws meaning from it. But most leaders still struggle to integrate stories into their leadership. So how do we find and tell our stories quickly in an environment where we can hardly pause to catch our breath? I'm thrilled to welcome David Hutchens to the show. He is an internationally recognized author, speaker, and master of organizational storytelling. David has helped companies like Coca-Cola, IBM, Walmart, and NASA harness the power of narrative. He's the author of Story Dash, Circle of the Nine Muses, among other books, and the genius behind the Leadership Story Deck. David helps leaders quickly unlock the stories that already exist within their teams and use them to create real business impact. David, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Hodges. I'm delighted to be in conversation. I am a fan of the work that you do.
Likewise, and please call me Heather.
Okay, Dr. Heather.
Come on now. Love it. Well, David, I'm going to try really hard not to fangirl you because I have known about your work for many years, and I learned about your work from my husband, Wade, and he let me borrow your book, Circle of the Nine Muses. And I have integrated one of your story exercises dozens and dozens of times into some of my corporate training. So I have used Twice Told Stories in like three different courses, in fact, and it has resonated with the people in my room when I've been training, and it has worked every single time. It's so powerful.
Every time, it's 100%. I have never seen it fail.
Yeah.
Ever.
I've got to tell you that the three ways I've used it, like I said, it has never failed to work. The rooms love it, especially when you set it up well. And you taught me how to do that just by reading the book. So anybody who wants to learn this, go grab the Circle of the Nine Muses, and you outline it so beautifully. I teach the Enneagram, and I use that in my advanced Enneagram course. So we do a Twice Told, I call it Twice Told Ennea Stories. I've used it in culture building in organizations and like telling culture stories. And then I've used it when I've taught presentation skills with leaders to help them break out of just the data, like get off the PowerPoint, start telling stories, and let me help you do that. And I've used it in those three areas. So you're saying,
so since we're talking about it, I feel like we should say a few words for your audience who are going, what is this process? I can do that. I can real quickly.
Tell us about it.
Yeah. So the idea of Twice Told Stories, it's a lot of fun. And in your audience, I mean, if they're facilitators, they could pretty easily do this. The idea is that, if you have a large group, you put people into story circles, and that's a whole process in and of itself. People in little groups of four, all around the room telling stories around something that we've invited, a story about creativity, a story about Enneagram or whatever. And so in your little group, you tell a story and you hear three or four other stories. Well, the next step, what makes it twice told, is that you then say to the group, all right, select one member of your group who will tell their story a second time. And so, they also create titles of the stories. So they have a flip chart with, here's the four stories that we told, almost like chapters in a book. You see these four titles. And so we bring all those flip charts up to the front, and now one member of each group tells their story a second time. And the power of this, one, there's a filtering process where the group is more likely to select, oh, Heather, your story was so awesome. Everyone has to hear that, right? So we get these really powerful stories that come to the front of the room. The other thing that's doing is it's mimicking the social process that always happens, where social systems, we're constantly selecting certain stories. It's almost a mysterious process sometimes. We pick certain stories and repeat them. And in the process, we're creating identity. We're collectively saying this is who we are. And so when people say, hey, I wish I could have told my story. Why didn't I get to? Well, systems are always selecting the stories, right? And so it's a lot of fun. You hear amazing stories, and we'll talk later about all the cool stuff that happens when you tell a story. But the room is flooded with emotion and connection. It's just a powerful experience. So I'm so delighted that you're doing that.
Oh, well, thank you for teaching me how to do it. No, it's been so great, and like as you said, if you are a trainer or facilitator or a leader, what a great way to help make those connections and tell those stories. And one of the things that I have found that is just delightful and sometimes a little edgy is when you have your room name the stories, because they can get out of hand, like in a delightful way. Like you have to set boundaries, and like sometimes with some of the rooms, like, okay, let's keep it PG, at least PG-13 when we're naming the stories. But that can be a lot of fun because it
my clients haven't done the dirty names, so I don't know what's happening in your room there.
Oh, come on, it's not just me. That's so great. But it is such a fantastic storytelling device. So thank you for teaching that. I have also absorbed your latest book, Story Dash, I think maybe 3 times now. And I say absorbed because I have listened to it. So the audiobook, and I love that you narrate it, the Story Dash book. And while I listened to it on my own and worked through it on my own, I did pause and work through all of the exercises that you recommend and take everybody through. And so I have I have my story stack on 3x3 sticky notes. I brought it with me.
Right on. That's the story canvas.
The story canvas, which you generously provide on your website, and so I worked through that, and then of course the leadership story deck. So
that's one of my favorite resources.
This lives on my desk. So thank you for all of your work and everything that you do. It's just extraordinary.
It's fun. Sometimes it feels like the biggest scam in the world. I have clients who fly me to Paris so that I can help them tell stories. And I'm like, how did I get this cool job?
How did you get that cool job? I'm so curious. So I'm calling you a storytelling evangelist. So how did your journey into this world of organizational storytelling begin? Was there a precipitating event that started all of this for you?
Yeah. So, the way I talk about stories, I focus on types, taxonomies of different kinds of stories we've been thinking about. And so you're asking for an origin story, right? Which are really powerful stories. The thing that was true at the beginning, the thing that brought me into this world. Those are great stories to have ready to go. And I have a lot of those because a lot of people say, hey, how'd you get into this scam gig that you're in? So here's one of them, Heather. So this was back in the late 1990s, early 2000s. I was living in Atlanta. I'm in Nashville now, but I was in Atlanta at the time. And one of the clients that I wanted to work with in Atlanta was the Coca-Cola company, which of course is headquartered there. And I was doing freelance communications work. And so finally I got invited into Coca-Cola, my big break. And so they sat me down and said, all right, here's our communications challenge. At the time, Coca-Cola was on a system-wide transformation journey to become what was known as a learning organization. Mm-hmm. And if you're, back in the 90s, early 2000s, there's a best-selling book called The Fifth Discipline. Peter Senge is the author of that. And so it's really influential, back in that age. And so they were making this transformation system-wide. And they said, early in our work, we've come in against a problem. The challenge is nobody around here understands what we're talking about when we say we want to become a learning organization. And, if any of your audience has read the book, The Fifth Discipline, it's kind of dense. It's kind of academic. Not geeks like us love that stuff, but not everybody does. Mm-hmm. And they're like, can you help explain what this is? I was like, yeah, of course I can do that. And then I went home and I panicked. The first thing I did was buy the book. I didn't even know what it was. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to get fired, so fired from Coke even before I've started. And I didn't know how to tackle this challenge. And so without any other ideas, I created a blank document on my computer and I wrote the words, "Once upon a time, there was a sheep." And I wrote this crazy story about a flock of sheep that outwits a pack of hungry wolves. And in the process, they become a learning organization and they show all the capabilities, systems thinking and mental models and all these different capabilities. And I put it all in this story, and I called a friend of mine who is a children's book illustrator, and I said, "Hey, Bobby, you got to draw me some crazy pictures." And I dropped these pictures in the manuscript, and I called it "Outlearning the Wolves." And I brought it back to Coke, and I thought, I am doubly fired. I mean, it was so weird. It's like snarky Saturday Night Live humor, and it was just weird. And I thought, I'm so fired. And I didn't get fired. What happened was a publisher picked it up, and this was back in the early 2000s. Today, that crazy book is still selling. It's in like a dozen different languages. It sold like 250,000 copies. And that was kind of the moment where I said, all right, what just happened here? Because I started hearing these stories, Caterpillar, the earth moving company. Caterpillar put on a stage production of Sheep and Wolves to talk about learning at the organization. Like I was hearing these crazy stories of engagement. I was like, what is happening here? The chief of police in Singapore put on a wolves and sheep puppet show for his officers. And I was like, what is happening? And so that was really the moment where I said, okay, I started in marketing. I was writing stories to sell Coca-Cola as an advertising guy. And so what is it about this technology, this thing that is story that has this power? And that was really the moment where I said, okay, I think I'm going to focus on this. And that was 20 years ago. It's been so fun that I've just kind of stuck with it.
It all started with once upon a time, there was a sheep.
Called Outlearning the Wolves. Yeah, it's still on Amazon. So
extraordinary. So for over 20 years, you've been at this work. You have been helping leaders and organizations find and tell their stories. Because I think a lot of times people think, "Oh, I don't have any stories. I don't have a story to tell."
Everyone says that. Yeah. Yeah, everyone says they say I don't have any stories, and then the other thing they say is I'm a terrible storyteller. Everyone knows a great storyteller who is the life of the dinner table, and everyone says that's not me. That's Wade. It's not me. It probably is Wade, is my guess.
Yeah, it is Wade.
Yeah,
he can spin a yarn for sure.
Right. And so what I tell people is, no, that this isn't about being a performer or, Wade's on a stage for a living, right? No, when we go have dinner with friends, we default to this language that is story. No one has to tell you to do it. So this is your brain's operating system for making sense of the world. It's not about performing. It's about taking this language that already lives in your brain and that you already exercise over dinner and being more mindful and intentional about connecting it to the work that we do.
I love that you called it the brain's operating system, and it's universal. Like you work internationally across different cultures, all different continents. Every culture tells stories.
I can make that statement with confidence. All of them, 100%. I've never met anybody who doesn't tell stories.
Yeah, it's how we make sense of things, how we make sense of the world, how we make sense of the crazy or the delightful or the painful, isn't it?
Yeah. Small children are telling stories. Jung would say that we're born with story structure already coded in our brains. That one's controversial. Not everybody agrees, but yeah, it's built in.
Yeah, the Jungian, the collective consciousness of stories. Yeah. So
archetypes and yeah.
So from your perspective, why do organizations and leaders, why do they need to tell stories?
Because if you're a leader, your role is to engage people to action. And to do that, we have to understand, why do people act and what motivates people and what is the role of emotions in organizational systems. And most of the clients I work with are technology and science and engineering and data leaders. Super, super smart people.
Right.
that aren't good at all at engaging people in their work. Nobody understands what they're talking about. And, if you've read any neuroscience of emotion, Antonio Damasio wrote Descartes' Error. The belief a lot of us have is that we lead with our rationality. We're smart people. We make rational decisions. And Damasio shows that no, we make decisions with our bodies, with our emotions, and then our brains trail behind that by a few seconds and then justify what we've already decided in our emotions. So if the system is stuck, if we want the system to move and we're frustrated because people aren't moving, a lot of leaders go, ooh, we need more slides. We need more data. And that's usually not very effective. Usually, if the system is stuck, it's because people are scared or they're mad or they don't like it, or they don't trust, or maybe they just like the processes they have and they're too tired to change. So story is the lever that moves these hidden currents in the system that are emotion. And most leaders don't know what to do with that.
Gosh, I get to work with a lot of different organizations as well. And you're right. A lot of them are on high center. Like they got to get off that hump. And the default, as you said, is bring me the data. Show me quantifiably what's going on. But it doesn't really, it takes you so far, but it doesn't give you the deep insight to human nature, which I think a lot of organizational problems are people problems, whether CEOs realize that or not. And to get into that, we need to find the stories. We need to understand what ethnographers understand. I'm a qualitative researcher. What qualitative researchers understand, and what a master storyteller like yourself understands, is that the richness is in the stories, because that's where the emotions are, and that's where people will make their better decisions.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's scary. I don't think that I think this is part of the work that we don't talk about enough. It's scary, because another reason why a lot of leaders don't want to do this is, it's easy to vomit up everything I know onto a slide and project it onto a wall and show how smart I am and how much I thought through this issue. And that's why we do it. And then we use the slides as a crutch. I watch people present like this, with one shoulder towards the audience, because the slides are telling them what to say, and they don't know what to say if they don't have the slides. What if we could default to this more human, more natural language, where now, and it is scary, because when we use this language, it's like we open ourselves up. We reveal a little more of who we are. And a lot of leaders are scared to do that. Yeah.
So they need to have a mindset shift to allow themselves to tell stories.
A mindset shift and maybe an experiential shift. Because I'm a learning person like you, right? We stand in a room and say, let's do something a little different. And leaders tell stories and they go, oh my gosh, that felt really different. Wow. What do I do with this? And right. So you almost need that emotional, kinesthetic, experiential shift as well. Yeah.
Gosh, the fear of that, the kinesthetic nature of that. So I don't know if you can see behind me. I don't know if we can see this on the screen, but do you see these two pieces of art?
I see the Van Gogh.
Yeah. That's actually made out of Legos. So,
what?
Yeah, isn't that cool? Like my kids gave me those for Christmas and birthday. So I'm a Lego Serious Play facilitator, and in LSP, Lego Serious Play, I take executives, usually like in senior leadership teams, through a process using Legos, and it's kinesthetic. So you're like almost 3D printing problems and solutions on the table in front of you. But where the magic happens, and what I'm noticing is what you're talking about, and what you've taught me is the storytelling. So when they create a model, it's not just about the model, it's about the metaphor and the symbol and the stories that we tell through the model. And there's that connection there that just is simply extraordinary. And I think I'm understanding now, based on your work and what I've been learning from you, unknowingly, you were teaching me this through the years, of what's happening when leaders take those Legos, they build a model, they tell the story from it. It's connecting right there. It's extraordinary. I'd love to show it to you sometime.
Well, I'm a huge fan of Lego Serious Play. I didn't know that you were certified for that. In fact, I know Per Christensen, the guy behind it. So,
of course you do. David, you know everybody.
I don't know everybody, but it's been a while since I've seen him. But yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. The first time I saw that, I was like, okay, what's up with that? I saw it on a friend's resume, and I thought, come on, girl, you're more serious than that. You know, you're a PhD. What the heck? Right. And then I kept seeing it, and I was like, okay, take my money. I want to get certified in this because it's so powerful, and I think it's because of stories.
It's because of stories. It's because the mind is a meaning-making machine. Mm-hmm. And if you build two little Lego models and hold them up, the audience's brain wants to connect them, wants to create some kind of relationship between them. And even before you describe what the models mean, their brains are working to fill in the spaces, right? And so stories do the same thing. When we tell stories, the audience's brain is incredibly active. Right, they're connecting it to their own experiences and their own emotions, and now we're co-creating together. Simply me telling a story and you listening to a story, we're creating together when we do that.
Ah, extraordinary. Okay, your latest book, The Story Dash. So it is all about creating, and I'm going to quote, lightning fast storytelling for lean innovation. So you offer us a structure for quickly accessing stories, and it's your book. It's not thick. It is power packed. It is straight to the point. I've worked through it 3 times now, and you offer us a structure for how to get to those stories. So can you walk us through one of your favorite Story Dash exercises? And tell us what's the magic in it and why does it work so well?
Yeah. So, the paradox of this is, like I said, we're all doing this thing. At dinner, we default to this language, and then we walk into work and something happens. We shut that off. And so Story Dash is about having a intentional process for bringing story connection to the work that we care about. And the whole Dash idea is, there's new innovation we're bringing forward. There's a strategy we're introducing. There's a project plan around that. And what I'm saying is build the story piece into that project plan. Don't wait for it to happen by itself. You'll be disappointed. It won't be good. You have to be intentional. It's a skill. We have to build that in. And so Story Dash is, bring the project forward. And now as a team, let's find the stories. And so, like you, my work is experiential learning. And I like, kind of like you with Legos, I like, what's the thing that I can touch and hold in my hand? You already showed one of them, the story deck. It's what it sounds like. It's a deck of cards with dozens of ideas. Of stories that you have that you're probably not telling. And where this came from is the first thing everybody says in this work is, I can't think of any stories. Everyone says that. I say that too. I can't think of any either. And so, okay, let's do a process called story mining. Go through the deck one at a time and go, do I need a story like this? No, I don't need an origin story. No. A vision story. No. Ooh, I need an innovation process story. Oh, tell me about a time when you solved a problem with creativity. What did that look like? Right? Ooh, I need a story like that. And so that kicks off the process of finding the narrative assets, the value holding stories that we should be bringing forward and connecting to the work. And then we've got lots of other fun tools. You showed me another one that you downloaded, the story canvas. We identify the story. Now let's build it so we can tell it with impact. And that's where the story canvas comes in. And then we can stand up and, workshop our stories together, start connecting them to the work, make sure that they're delivering the outcome that we want. And then bring them forward and start telling those stories. It's a lot of fun, a lot of energy. It brings emotion into the room. Like people, in this process, people kind of reconnect with themselves and they say things like, wow, I remember why I cared about this work to begin with. The young version of me that was idealistic, I kind of reconnected with that person today, right? Because not only do stories connect ideas and audiences, they reconnect us with ourselves as well. mind and spirit and emotion all come together. So it's a really rich, active, fun process, and it moves the work forward as well. It can be really powerful.
Can you give us an example of how you have used the story deck recently?
Yeah. Actually, just yesterday, I delivered a session that this is a little different than what I normally do, because this was not a strategy business technology audience. Mm-hmm. It was a session that I call Resistance Stories. And where this came from is I have a dear friend here in Nashville. She works at one of the big universities here in town. And she told me that, she's one of the world's experts in how young children develop empathy. How does empathy development in kindergarten, first grade children? She's the world's authority on this. Mm-hmm. And she told me that, she has, first of all, she has 300 papers on the website. It's like, how do you even have 300 papers? I haven't written 300 of anything. But they were all removed from the university website because they had words in them like include, referring to children in the classroom, or transition, referring from transitioning to kindergarten to first grade. Doesn't matter. The word transition, the university deleted her life's work because of this political environment we're in. And there's a lot of people who have these stories of their vocations and their joy being disrupted by this political environment. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people I know are really feeling helpless right now and saying, somebody do something. Well, we can bring stories. And I said to my friend, you have to tell people that story. Mm-hmm. And that's where I got the idea. I'm a story guy. I want to help people tell their stories. Yesterday was the session called Resistance Stories. And I actually created a new story taxonomy, Heather, because the ones that I needed aren't quite in the deck. There's a story type that I called I Stand by My Values. Mm-hmm. The administration challenged me, but I refused to take action because there's something I believe, and I'm going to stand by what I believe, even though there were consequences. Impact disrupted was one of the story types. I'm doing this really important work in the world. I mean, we talk to people who are delivering HIV medications to the Congo, and it's stopped. And she was like, people are already dying. Are we okay with this? So these stories of impact interrupted. So yesterday was Resistance Stories. It was all these amazing leaders who are traumatized by what has happened to them. And the conversation was, you have power in this environment. You're not powerless. Your power is your stories, your voice. Let's work on those stories. So we used this taxonomy of resistant story types and then developed our stories and then tested them with each other. And not only is this powerful for bringing forward, for having a better conversation about this environment that we're in, it was also incredibly healing. Mm. It's just really, we were in tears by the end of it, So, I focus a lot on leadership in organizations, but I think the highest calling of this work is taking dismembered systems and remembering them, taking the broken parts and reconnecting them. And story is language that allows you to do that. And so that was just 24 hours ago. It was about this time yesterday we were telling these resistance stories using these same ideas and these same principles. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I could hear in your voice and see in your eyes just the impact it had on you, David.
I'm feeling it again. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that the power of stories too? Is that the emotions live on, and that's what's so impactful about stories themselves.
We are made to feel. That's how we connect. It's how we make sense of the world. And again, we step into the organization, and suddenly everybody acts like, oh, I have to show people how smart I am. And, we change. And, leaders we're emotional beings, and organizations are emotional systems. Mm-hmm. And so if you're a leader who's not comfortable dealing with these emotion currents, this emotion. I use the word emotion data because my science people like that. Ooh, it's data. Emotion is data. Okay, I'll talk about it. Right. But yeah, we have to get comfortable with this, and so this is the language for managing human beings.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's some leaders that think stories are just rainbows and puppy dogs and lollipops and unicorns, and that's not the truth of it at all. There's so much more depth and richness and humanity in the stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be. I mean, a lot of people think it's manipulation, and it's not. It's just tell me what happened and how that felt and what you think it means. Mm-hmm. And it's the language of sense making, mm-hmm. which is the task of the leader. Mm-hmm. You know.
Yeah, when we think about data versus stories, or stories being data, yeah. I can't argue with your story. I may have a different perspective on what might be happening in the world, but I'm never going to argue with your story because your story is your story. And that's powerful.
Yeah. So when my friend at the university tells her story about her life's work being deleted, and I also told her story, I protected her confidentiality, but I told it as well. When you do that, nobody comes into the comments and says, I disagree. The language doesn't even make sense. You don't disagree with the story. Nobody comes in with philosophical debates. Mm. This is not the time to talk about isms. Mm-mm. This happened. Mm-hmm. What are you going to do with that? Are you okay with this? Is this who we want to be? So when we tell stories, it's a different kind of conversation. Most of the time, if we lead with data or didactic statements, people's position is judging. Your brain does something different. When you lead with data, people go, oh, I agree, or I disagree, or where did you get your data, or my data is different, or how are you interpreting that? Like your brain is active. When you tell a story, you move out of that. You move down into your body where emotion lives. And now we're not judging at all. Judging doesn't, that kind of, you might be judgmental. You might say, I don't like how you live. I disagree with you. But we're in a different mode of connection, and that's more powerful for bringing the parts back together. Mm.
I didn't know I was going to tell you this. Yesterday, no, today's not yesterday. On this last Sunday, Wade told a story about me. He had my full permission to tell it.
Like at church? Or?
At church. He told it at church. It was a story about me, about a miscarriage, and it was we've never told it before. It just was never right. But I knew he was telling it. He'd written it out. I knew it was coming. I knew I knew every word he was going to say. And I was sitting there, and I physically felt it in my body as he was telling it. And I noticed it in myself. I'm like, okay, what is happening to you? Okay, just notice that. Interesting. You're good. You're fine. That was powerful. That hurt. You are healed. And it was just knowing that stories impact us viscerally is so important for us to know.
Mm. I felt that even as you were saying it, and you didn't even tell me the whole story, just that outline. I was feeling that. I'm curious, what was that? What was that like for Wade, and also what was it like for the audience, for the congregation as they listened? What did they say about it?
What I know is, interestingly, Caleb, our producer, who's my son, is also the videographer at church, and he told me that from his perspective, he's filming Wade up on stage, he could see people wipe their eyes. That there was a heaviness in the room. There was levity in the story at the beginning, and then it was heavy, and then Wade moved on. So I know that was experienced by the congregation together. Afterwards, I had people come up to me and say, "Yeah, me too." And so there was that recognition and identity of, I've gone through that as well. But interestingly enough, some of the comments to Wade, and I overheard them, was, you got her. First of all, I know you had permission to tell that story because you did, but they came and said to me, "Thank you for allowing him to tell that story because it was so impactful in the moment." I'm not. I need to ask him what it was like for him. So
That would be
that'll be my homework.
uh-huh.
Yeah.
My guess is, I mean, he's a pro on a stage, right? He's been doing this for a while, but my guess is all the emotion stirred up again, and he was probably, I have to believe he was having to manage, the persona and what was happening inside. Because you and I talked about this before we started recording, is the whole neuroscience of this. Because when Wade was telling that story, and now when you were telling the high level version to me, something really powerful is happening. And literally, we have brain scans of this. We know what your brain looks like on story. They'll take a storyteller and roll them into an MRI machine and scan their brain as they're telling a story. And what we see is that a lot of regions of the brain are really active and lit up. The fascinating part is if we then take the person listening to the story and slide them into a second MRI, we have these brain scans too. So one guy's listening to the guy over here, and both brains are being scanned. What we see is that their brain lights up in a pattern nearly identical to the teller's. And there's even a video, a TED Talk, a neuroscientist from Princeton actually shows you can see the brain waves, and at first they're doing this. And as the guy tells a story, you see them come into alignment like this. Wow. The theory behind this is called neural coupling, and some call it neural entrainment. But as you were telling your story, and I just told you, wow, I kind of felt that and experienced that. If we had scanned our brains, we would have seen our brains are connected like this. And it's really powerful when this happens. That's the neural coupling. My brain was changing shape to become like your brain. So I'm feeling what you're describing almost as if it had happened to me. And so that's neural coupling. And it's really powerful when this happens. And data doesn't create that connection. And PowerPoint slides will never create that connection. Stories with emotion content create this neural coupling connection. And so that's what my work is. I tell leaders, we want to bring this moment of connection into more parts of the work that you're doing.
So when we think about, and I'm circling back to the stories of resistance, and I'm just, from a meta perspective right now, I'm geeking out, David, learning from you, talking about stories, dissecting my own experience, telling stories, thinking about what others are hearing, knowing what's going on with the stories of resistance. Dadgummit, you created a whole new taxonomy of stories. They were like, wait, like let's not jump over that. Like put that above the fold. That's really, really cool. The work that you're doing, David, is so impactful and truly nerdy, but really impactful.
Total geek. I'm a total geek.
Yeah, neurocoupling. All right, let's start there again. So when a storyteller is telling a story in an impactful way, and it has structure, and it's you've taught us how to do that.
Right.
The listener's brain changes shape to match the storyteller. They literally get on the same wavelength.
That's the neural entrainment. After we're done, I'll send you the link so that you can see the video of it happening in real time. But yeah, like remember the old days when we used to go to movie theaters?
Yeah.
Like you know how as you're watching the movie, after a while the audience disappears and the walls of the theater kind of dissolve and you're in the movie at some level. That's neural coupling happening. It transports you to a different place.
Wow. Okay, so then I've got to ask you, since you're an expert in this area. I paint on stage for my keynotes, and I've gotten to where I do several paintings during a 45 or 60-minute keynote, and I've always noticed, first of all, it gets really quiet in the room when I'm painting, even though there's rock music and a video going on. the audience gets really, really quiet. And people have come up to me later, even years later, and have said, remember that time when you painted Hemingway or Bono or Maya Angelou or Lucille Ball? Remember that time? I'll never forget. And then they tell me the story. Something happens when we watch an artist creating live on stage, because my intention is to visually tell a story, to bring the audience along with me and like, let me paint you a picture. Let me tell you a story with my paintbrush. What's happening there? Is that the neural coupling?
I think that there's some neural coupling happening there at a couple levels.
Okay.
And this is me theorizing. Someone might disagree, but here's my guess of what's happening. One is, first of all, you're painting, you're living a story. You know, a story is somebody, taking action, and there's risks and conflict. Oh, what if Heather messes up? She's painting while we're watching her. This might not go well. I mean, there's stakes and there's conflict, and that's interesting in the same way that conflict in a plot is interesting. I wonder if the other thing that's happening is because it's movement. The way neural coupling works is, if I tell a story, if I talk about, I was in the backyard with my son, and I told him to go long, and I threw the football to him. If I describe it and if I make this motion with my hand, if we scan our brains again, the neuromotor cortex, I think is what it's called, we see that light up in my brain. It lights up in your brain as well, as if you were the one who had thrown the football. So I think that not only because there's stakes in terms of you painting this picture and we're watching you do it, I think the movement, we're joining with you in the movement as well. And at some level, that's us up there painting that picture and feeling the emotion of, ooh, I hope this works out. And I hope it goes well. That's my theory of what's happening. But I do think it's neural coupling.
Wow. I have that same thought too. Like, I hope I don't screw this up. I hope it turns out like I intended it to.
Yeah, it's a performance. It's like a juggler. Ooh, I hope he doesn't drop it. And that's engaging, right?
Yeah. What if she spills the paint? Yeah, that's all. Yeah. Of course, that's going through my mind. I had never thought of it from that perspective of what if that's what's happening with them as well. I just knew it was a visual way to draw them in, and like a visual hook of making sure that they remember whatever the key message is. And also, it's entertaining. It's fun to watch an artist, paint.
And then it's metaphorical, kind of like we were talking about with the Legos. I'm watching Bono, and I have my own associations of who Bono is and what he represents. And so I'm making those connections. So I've seen videos. I haven't seen you do it live, but I've watched some of your videos. It's so engaging and compelling. So I know it's powerful.
Oh my gosh.
Just from watching it on a YouTube video, I know it's powerful.
I hope someday soon you and I will be speaking at the same event, and I can attend, your keynote, and you can watch me paint live on stage. And wouldn't that be a hoot? Okay.
We could have.
I'm like, event coordinators out there, listen, if you want David Hutchens and Heather Hodges at the same event, call us now.
Stories and creativity. It totally goes together. We could totally do a gig.
Wouldn't that be so fun?
Let's do it. Let's make it happen. I'm in.
Yeah.
I am in.
Like, I will open for you, David.
I'll open for you.
I'll carry your bags. Just put me on. Too fun. Well, what if we've mentioned the story deck. You've got your story deck there. I've got my story deck here. First of all, what compelled you to create these in the first place? How did that happen? Before I open them and let's examine them.
So where this came from is, I've heard leaders, as you said, in lots of different cultures, tell thousands of stories. And over time, I started noticing some patterns to that. And leaders keep telling the same kinds of stories. And it's contextual. So, for example, when I work with strategy leaders, I've noticed strategy leaders tend to tell the same kinds of stories over and over again. When I work with sales leaders, they tell the same kinds of stories. I helped someone like you as a story type, right? We'll go farther for you is a great story, sales story. So I started noticing these types. If we're doing innovation work, once again, there are certain stories for that. Culture and belonging, even individual stories. As Caleb's a young guy, he's starting to build his brand and his career. Their stories Caleb should be telling about himself, right? So I started noticing these different story types, and I started capturing them and creating a taxonomy of stories. And then I thought, this isn't a document. I think these are cards. And so that's where the story deck came from. There's dozens of stories in here that you can connect to sales, identity, transformation, innovation, individual influence, learning and knowledge making. So lots of different stories. And it answers the question the resistance that everybody has who says, I don't have any stories. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. You are made of stories, and so this helps people find the stories that they didn't know that they knew. It's on Amazon. Can I do a plug?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. I'm going to put a link in the episode notes so people can go straight there. Okay, let's open the story deck.
Okay.
Walk us through what are we looking at here?
So I just opened mine, and mine's completely out of order. So it's.
I intentionally went back and put mine in order for this conversation.
Yeah, that's the problem with the deck of cards, right?
Yeah.
At the heart of the story deck is a series of cards that look kind of like this. So this is card number 1 in the story deck. So you see each one. There's a number up in the corner. So this is card number 1. There's a. Am I backwards? Can people read this?
You're forward.
Okay, when I look at it, it's all reversed. So there's a name of the story type. So the first one is called A Leader with Conviction. There's a reason I'm here. And there's actually a reason why this is the number 1 card in the deck. This is a really flexible story. Anytime there's a new project that you're bringing forward, that's an opportunity to tell a story. Do you know why I care about this thing? There's something that connects me to this. Let me tell you what brings me to this, right? So these are stories we can tell a lot. There's a description, kind of a use case of when you might want a story like this. And then down at the bottom is a prompt that invites you to start reflecting on, what might my version of that story sound like? And then on the back, this is really interesting. There's an example of what it sounds like when somebody tells this story. And these are all real stories that I've heard people tell. These are all true. And the utility of this is as people go through the deck one at a time and go, ooh, I need a story like this. And then they say the thing, I can't story like that. Okay, you know how when you go out for dinner or drinks with friends and somebody tells a story of, the craziest thing happened last weekend. And then somebody else goes, ooh, that happened to me. And then you go, oh, that happened to me, right? Simply hearing a story will unleash the narrative neural network in your brain. Yeah. So that you're more, so if you're going, ooh, I need why I'm a leader with conviction, why I'm here story. Ooh, I can't think of one. Okay, read the example and you're more likely to go, oh, wait a minute. That reminds me of a time when, So it's not guaranteed. It's not 100%, but you're more likely to think of a story. So that's how we use the examples on the back.
I love that because it primes the pump. It gets the wheels going,
right?
If you will. Okay, so what if I pick a random card? Pick a card, any card. I'm just like I'm not looking.
Okay.
And I'm picking a card. Nope. Here's the card. Ooh. Card number 8, our failure is an asset. Now we know. So how might we use a card like that?
These are powerful stories to tell. And these stories are the litmus test of an innovation culture. It's one of the things I look for is it safe to tell these stories? Are people confidently telling these stories? Because most of the leaders I work with they're like, hey, they're paying me the big bucks to get the right answer. I don't want to tell you about the time I screwed up. And I tell them the way to tell this story, it's not, did something dumb, don't know what I was thinking. It's not that. It's, I went into the work with an expectation. Here's what that was. I didn't get the results that I expected. And here's my best thinking about why we got the results that we got. Now here's how I'm changing my beliefs and my behaviors in my mental models to get better results next time. And as a leader, not only is it okay for me to tell these stories, I owe it to you to tell these stories, you know? I mean, and then often I'll say to the group, when a leader tells these stories, do you trust them less? And everyone goes, no, we love you more when you tell these stories, right? And so I do a lot of work with leaders around these learning stories. These are the heart of organizational learning. Because when something goes wrong, I mean, there's a cost, right? It costs money or time or psychic energy. So we've made this investment. And now we want to extract value from that and share that with the system. Now I've saved you the trouble of making that dumb mistake that I made. And now we're all smarter. A great thing to do. When I work with Accenture in Germany, you know, we were just talking about this. They have beer in the break room, right? So, you know, we all go into the break room and everybody gets beer at 4:30, and they're like, "Oh, Heather, tell that story of that screw up you did." And you're like, "I don't want to." Heather. You know, we're all holding our beer stand, and it's a lot of fun. But what it does is it creates a culture that normalizes telling these stories. And now, not only is it okay to tell these stories, we will celebrate you. We'll make you a hero for telling these stories, right? And so that's the learning story. These are really great stories to tell.
But the psychological safety that you need in a culture to be able to tell stories like that, it sounds like that is one of the necessities. Like, we've got to have that before we can tell these learning stories.
Or maybe this is the way to exercise that psychological safety. If it's not there, we can tell the stories. And you know, one thing, this is a whole other conversation, the sense-making piece, right? Because after we tell a story, that's not the end of a conversation. It's the beginning of a conversation, especially if you're a mental health professional, right? You know that, hey, we have to unpack that. We have to talk about what that means. Ooh, I heard some emotions in there. I heard some assumptions. I heard some questions. I heard some actionable wisdom that we can draw from. So we have to have a conversation where we unpack that story. And then we can talk about the story phenomenon itself. Was it safe to tell this? Did you feel appreciated and heard? If not, what could we have done better, right? And so now we can do an entire retreat for 5 days where all we're doing is telling stories and talking about stories, and people don't get tired. It stays energizing the whole time.
Wow. That just reminded me, I wanted to ask you, what does it look like when you take a group of executives or an organizational team through one of your programs? How does this look like in real world out there in organizations?
So my work is leadership development, skill building. So I'm a learning guy. You know, I do keynote speeches like you. I should do more. It's like better money for much less work. but I like skill building. I'd rather be in a classroom for 8 hours doing the work. A lot more hours for less money, but it's where my heart is. I can do both. But we start from square one. What is this language, that story? Why should we be talking about that as leaders? What is the role of emotion? Some of the things that we've talked about. Now let's bring in some work that's important to you right now, because we're not just learning abstract in a vacuum. We're doing this because it's going to move forward the work that we care about. So bring in the strategy, bring in the new innovation, bring in the change. Let's go through the process and find the value-holding narrative assets that we should be connecting to that. So we practice, we use the resources we just discussed. We use the cards, we use the canvas. Let's build the story. Let's tell it to each other. Let's connect it to the work, make sure that it's going to get the outcome. Let's stand up and deliver that. Now, not only do we have some developed story assets that we can bring forward tomorrow, but in the process, we've also done the skill building, right? Because that's one of the principles of adult learning. Adults are motivated to learn if they see that it's going to get them what they want, right? So bring in the work challenges. That's what we're going to tell the stories about.
Mm-hmm. So you're working with their real world challenges in whatever industry you're working in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's what we did yesterday with the resistance stories, but in a different way. It's my work is in trouble. My career, my vocation is in trouble. I'm hurting. Mm-hmm. But let's do some work around that with some stories. Mm-hmm. It's always outcome focused.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. Now that you have created a new taxonomy of stories, are we going to get a version 2 of the leadership deck with resistant stories in it?
Right now, I'm working on science and engineering story deck. Because some of those there are some slightly different stories that scientists tell. The whole scientific process already is a story. And so grabbing some story assets in that, it's different cards, it's different story types. I've started taking notes on family and education storytelling. If there's kids involved, I've started capturing some of those. For change and resistance, I have those 3 stories. Not enough for a deck of cards, but I'm going to spend some more time with that.
Okay. Well, I will be watching Amazon and looking for that, and I'll be first in line for that.
Excellent. Woohoo!
Exactly. All right. Well, this has been such a fantastic conversation. And before I let you go, I have a couple other questions for you if you've got just a little bit more time. One of the things you said in the story dash was that the shortest distance between 2 people is a story. And we've talked a little bit about the neuro coupling. I think that is just fantastic. What do you say to somebody who knows they need to be telling stories? Like we have really, you've laid out a compelling case for why leaders and organizations need to tell stories. What do you say to somebody who says, I'm not a good storyteller? What would you encourage them? How do they get started?
The first thing I do is I give them a heads up. You're going to feel some internal resistance. It's fear. People, when I tell my story, people are going to see the emotional side of me. They're going to, they might not like the story. I might not tell it well. It might ramble too much. It might not have the impact that I want. I might be the only person who's doing this. It might seem weird to people. They might see me as soft and not smart, which is how I want to, right? There's all this stuff that comes up. And I tell people that if you want that engagement and that neural coupling and all the power that comes with it, that's the deal. You have to take this other piece of it. There's this humanity that emerges that you need to lean into. Without the humanity, you don't get the impact. And so sometimes I think it's funny we keep using this word storytelling because we're really talking about something much bigger than that. It's about bringing more of who we are to our leadership. And so when we do storytelling training, it's really a deeply personal transformation journey. People are surprised at the end of the program. They thought they were here to tell a sales story. And at the end, people say, wow, that felt profound. Something happened, and then we can talk about that. So what I let people know is, first of all, you're already doing this. I know you told stories at dinner last night.
Right.
That was kind of weird. I know you told stories at dinner last night. And so I make that shift from this isn't about being a TED Talk speaker. This is about taking your brain's sense-making software and being intentional with it, and then lean into your humanity and let's talk about what that felt like. And now we're on this transformation journey together.
I think that is just giving them the warning up front that it's like when people say, yeah, I'm not creative. Oh, yes, you are. I can't tell stories. Oh, yes, you can. Yeah. I just heard you. You over coffee a while ago, you were just telling me that story. There are stories in you. We just have to do the story mining and get to it. And, in this new world that we're in where, AI is everywhere, AI can do a lot of things, but it cannot tell a story like a human can tell a story, can it?
AI is actually renewing the energy and focus on the story skill. And all of these most human parts of leadership are now kind of coming into the dialogue around organizational leadership and organizational learning. Because as the robots come in and start doing more of our thinking for us, and they start making hamburgers for us and doing our jobs, there's like this existential question of what are people for? In the organization, it's all this most human stuff of dreaming together and imagining together and and maybe becoming more whole, right? And healing broken systems. So all the most human parts of ourselves are kind of coming to the forefront of the leadership literature right now. I'm actually doing some research around and maybe writing about it. I'll say this publicly. I don't say this too many places, but here's what I'm working on is love as a leadership capability. And what would it look like to invite this conversation of what does it mean to love, and where does that intersect with my role as a leader? It's kind of weird. Some people resist this conversation, which only makes me want to have it more, You're
such a rebel.
I am. I'm a punk. I'm a belligerent punk. Always have been.
Oh. But that idea that, even in our world of, bots and ChatGPT and everything else, the value of the human experience, it goes up. Like it's even more precious because of AI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is an exciting time to be in a leadership conversation. I think some really interesting stuff is about to start emerging.
I'm in. I can't wait.
I'm in. I'm in.
Before I let you go, I have a research assistant. Percy is the penguin, and he is fantastic, the coolest member of the I'm In team. And he has a couple questions for you. Percy, are you there? Great. Thank you, Percy. Okay, David, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Percy's first question for you comes from a previous guest, and her question was, how have you turned your passion into a successful business?
So first of all, did you hear Percy's voice in your head?
You didn't hear that?
I'm a little worried. Okay, so how did I turn my passion in? Say it again. What? I want to hear the language again.
You are focused on Percy.
I know. I was being a smart aleck.
Yeah, Percy, pop your head up again. See? Didn't you hear it? All right, go back. Yes, he just flashed off. Okay. So the question is, how have you turned your passion into a successful business?
Yeah. It's funny. You and I were talking about, this whole journey of, building a brand and being a thought leader and selling our ideas. And a couple years ago, I hired some consultants who specialize in this, and it was expensive. I paid them a bunch of money to look at what I'm doing and critique what I'm doing and give me some better ideas. And they said, and one of their questions was, what has your strategy been so far for building this career? And I said, I've just been following my curiosity. And they said, that's not a strategy. And they kind of shut me down. I'm like, and I was like, oh, wow, I've been doing it wrong. And I was really kind of upset. And you're like, right, I need to get out a flip chart and actually have a strategy. And then over time, I was like, no, it's the only strategy. If the idea of vocation, vocare, it's a calling, expressing who I am in the marketplace. I don't know any other way than to pay attention to yourself and say, where's my attention being drawn? When do I feel energized by something? What's interesting to me? And so if you look at my career path, it's kind of done this. I'm not super rich or anything, so maybe it is the wrong strategy, but I am super happy. So paying attention to myself and following my curiosity, whether that made me money or, there are days when I'm throwing cash in the air. Woo, I'm rich. And then 3 months later, I'll go, oh, I should have kept some of that money. So it's boom and bust. That's my whole career. But I'm following my curiosity, and it has served me really, really well. I can't think of a strategy.
That just resonates so deeply with me, David. Thank you for sharing that. That in curiosity, it's one of my core values. Is I just want to be.
Really?
It is. Deeply curious about it, and for me, it's people. Like I just love people so much, and I'm deeply curious about what motivates them. And to hear that is a business strategy? Okay, I'm in. Like, let's go that direction, because that keeps you nimble too. Like, whatever draws your attention, because you are so tuned in to people and organizations and culture, then that makes perfect sense to me. That's where your
Yeah.
mind is going to go. Your curiosity is going to lead you there.
And then if I'm having fun, I don't mind staying at my desk for another hour and getting a little bit more done because it's making me feel good, you know?
Yeah, because it is fun. Gosh,
It should be. I think.
Yeah.
What if work was fun? Wouldn't that be a revolution?
My work now is fun. I have a blast. It looks like you do too.
I do. Yeah, you and I have cracked the code on this. We ain't rich, but we're cracking the code.
Oh, wow. Okay. Percy's second question for you is, what question would you like to ask a future guest?
So, Percy, Heather, does Percy get to call you Heather, or are you Dr. Hodges to him?
Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, Percy calls me Dr. Hodges. I've told him over and over, please call me Heather.
So, Percy, Dr. Hodges and I have been talking about this movement of humanized leadership. And my question for the next guest is, what are we talking about when we refer to humanized leadership or humanized business? What does that mean to you, and why is it important to bring humanity to our leadership and to our business? That's my question.
It's a good one.
It's a hard one.
Yeah.
I'll be listening to see what they do with it.
Yeah. This is not a Percy question. This is a Heather question. Do you know your Enneagram number by any chance? I'm curious.
I'm most aligned. Well, do you want to guess based on what
no. I don't. I never guess.
Oh, really? Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
I actually appreciate that, because that's fraught with problems to project on some, right? I think I'm most aligned with the 5. Wing 4. And it made me really happy when I read that 5 wing 4s. You know how you can get a list of some of the celebrities? John Lennon is probably 5 wing 4. Is the guess. I dig that, you know.
Yep. Thomas Merton. So deep.
Really?
Waters, yeah.
Ooh.
I know. Gosh, I can see it. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
what about you? What about you?
I am a social 8. So I'm an Enneagram 8. So
I wouldn't have gone to 8. So
yay.
Because I see 8s as being really, like, I'm glad you said social 8. I see them as like bulls that charge through, you know? Maybe I don't know you well enough.
Yes, and I've been working really hard lately, so hopefully that you're seeing maybe I've grown a little bit, but yeah, most definitely an 8. Yeah.
Wow.
So Wade would say, "Oh yeah, she's an 8," but I'm a social 8. So I'm all about taking care of my people and making sure others are well cared for, and I'm all about justice. Like it's got to be right. So.
I'm telling you, the toughest people I know have just amazing hearts, and they're soft little tomatoes on the inside. You know, they have the shell on the outside. But yeah.
Yeah, that's me. I call it my suit of armor. Like I have an exoskeleton, as thick as nails. But you get me talking, you put a kitten or a puppy or a baby in my hands, and I turn all mushy. But that exoskeleton is all about protecting that. Like
wow.
I don't often let people see it. So.
All right. Well, I won't come after you then.
All right. Well, no wonder you and I geek out all the time. Is because you're a 5 with that strong 4 wing. So
yeah, I like new ideas.
Yes, yeah, like you play with ideas. That's your gig.
Ideas are fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, David, thank you so much for sharing your ideas and your insights and your deep wisdom with us. I am just so grateful for your time today. How can our listeners find you? Maybe even book a training or a keynote from you, and where can they get their copy of the Story Dash, leadership, all of your works?
All the goodies.
All the good stuff.
I'm most active on LinkedIn. I'm posting new ideas there all the time. So that's kind of my main social media now is LinkedIn. Storytellingleader.com. Storytellingleader.com is where you can get a look at what the program is. And then there's links to Amazon. You can see the books. You can see the cards. Download the story canvas for free. All of that's on storytellingleader.com. So those are the two best places to go.
Okay, excellent. And
Thank you.
You bet. We will link those in the episode notes as well. So David, thank you again for being here. I've geeked out. I hope we get to have coffee or a beer really soon and just continue this conversation.
I think you've got family in Nashville, so we've got an excuse to hang out. I hope Caleb can come and chill with us as well. Bring Wade. He's okay too.
Yeah. Well, and I'm hoping to see your better half, Robbie, if we get to see each other soon. So give her my love, and maybe I can convince her. Can we sweet talk her to come on the podcast?
I'll tell her.
Will you? Okay. Lead the way. Put in a good word for me.
She'll do it.
Great. David, thank you. And thank you to our listeners for joining us in this conversation. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone who could use a dose of inspiration and creativity. And please leave us a review. I read every single one. They're so precious. And until next time, keep saying I'm in to creativity, bold thinking, transformational growth, and meaningful conversations. May you be wildly creative in your life and leadership. I'll see you soon.